Frank had titled the presentation, I think, recruiting local candidates. And I'm not sure that that's what I'm going to do unless I can recruit you. I think more appropriately would be getting recognition for the Constitution Party. The history of this is in 2017, our city councilman in Ward 9 passed away. The mayor's job was to elect to appoint a temporary replacement until they could have a special election. I had been politically aware. Is this too loud? Okay. Missouri. I'd been politically aware for all of my adult life. I voted. I knew what the issues were. I knew I was conservative. I knew I would vote for any candidate on the ballot as long as they were Republican. In 2016, the GOP lost me, and I started looking for a replacement. And my wife and I actually had both been delegates in the Missouri Party for Ted Cruz, and we went to the senatorial district convention for the GOP as delegates. And after the national convention, we both looked at each other and said, this isn't for us. They're not going to change. We needed something else. We started looking around, and we found out that the Missouri Constitution Party was having their convention in exactly the same city. So I looked at her and I said, we're going back to Branson. We met Darrell Castle and Joan, and that was the start, really, of my political activism that year. So in 2017, when the mayor was supposed to appoint a replacement, God said, your turn. And so I went and I applied. And the first thing the mayor asked me was, why'd you bring your wife? I don't know where you go with that question. Because she's going to answer the phone when I'm not home, and you want her to say hello and not what the heck do you want? And the mayor's like, oh, well, I guess that makes sense. I said, but if you'd like, Mayor, she can sit in the hallway while we have our conversation. And the mayor's, oh, no, dear, you just stay right there. She'll be fine. I didn't get that appointment. But it was good. It was good experience, and the whole time during the appointment process, I went to all the city council meetings, went to the committee meetings, went to the board meetings. Everybody down there in City Hall got to know who I was. I decided not to run in the special election because somebody else was running, and the appointee raised. He was brand new. He had been a UPS driver for 40 years, or worked for UPS for 40 years, and was retired. Raised $7,000. $3,500 of that came in large donations from outside our ward. Do you think the mayor helped him just a little bit? He beat the guy that was running against him 2-1. So this time around in 2019, when his 2-year, it's a 3-year term, but he had 2 years to finish. When it was up, I decided I was going to run. Again, your turn. Won't go into what all that was, but there was a lot of calling. And so I ran. He raised over $5,000 this time. I think it was close to $6,000. The first time he spent $1,300 of his $5,000 on a victory party. He raised about $6,000 this time, and I don't know how much he had left, but it was, I think he probably spent over $2,000 on his victory party this time. I was an unknown, and what I will tell you is bigger is better. There was a councilman that was wanting to help me. He wanted to help one of the councilors. If there's a controversial vote, it will come down 9-1 against him. And so he encouraged me to run, and he said, I'll give you some secrets. 1, knock on every door. Every single door. And number 2, don't go with the tiny yard signs. I had half as many signs, and I got more notoriety because you didn't miss any of my signs. I'm going to repeat some of what was said earlier. It is about location. I had signs outside of our ward because there's some main arteries coming into the ward. I'll put up a V like this with 2 of these signs, and they'll have 6 other signs down below it. This is the one you saw. So everybody that drove into our ward knew who I was by the end of the election. I didn't lose. People will come up to me and say, I'm sorry you lost the election. I didn't lose. I heard somebody say earlier today, we're going to redefine what losing and what success is. What I found out is a lot of people that cared, the first question they asked was, what party are you with? Which of the two parties are you with? You Democrat or are you Republican? My answer is neither one. What you talk about? I'm with the Constitution Party. In my experience, both the Republicans and the Democrats talk out of both sides of their mouth. They'll tell you whatever you want to hear, and then they're going to do whatever they want to do. The number one answer I got was, I can live with that. As long as I wasn't a Democrat, the Republican liked me. And as long as I wasn't a Republican, the Democrat liked me. And the other thing we found is that more Democrats were willing to cross over than Republicans. And we're probably philosophically further from the Democrats. Right, not the socialist Democrats, and that's the other thing that I found is that there's liberals and there's progressives, and it's the progressives that we don't agree with, but we can get along with the liberals because liberals are generally about liberty. I came in second. The incumbent smugly thinks he won the race. He had 281 votes. I had 195. 87 votes short of winning. The third place guy had gotten beat 2-1 in 2017. I tried to talk him out of running this time. When I saw that he had filed, I met with him for coffee and I said, Dan, he beat you 2-1 last time. I'm going to beat you this time. I know I can beat him, but I don't know if I can beat you both. One of us needs to get out of this race. I have a lot of respect for you. I helped you last time. I'm not going to ask you to get out. But one of us needs to get out, and it's not me. John, I raised $4,000 in my campaign, my fundraiser just now. I owe it to my supporters. I said, Dan, did you know you can give that money back? I think one of us is going to win this race. I said, only if one of us gets out, and it's not going to be me. Well, he stayed in. He got 158 votes. If he hadn't run and a third of his people had stayed home because the only reason they came was to support Dan, the rest of those voters would have voted for me because they didn't want the incumbent, and I'd have won by 30%. I didn't lose. It's all about going out and doing it. I put in $1,000 to start my campaign. I thought I don't need to form a committee. $1,000, that's going to go a long way. No. So I did form a committee, put $1,000 into the campaign, immediately went through that, put another $1,000 in the campaign, and then I ended up raising $1,800. I spent $2,700 total, got $1,100 back, kept $100 for myself, gave $500 to the American Legion Hall and $500 to the Shriners Hospitals. I just felt like that was the right thing to do because people had donated to me, and I didn't lose. But I didn't win, and so I took the money that they had donated to me and donated it to charity. I learned a lot going door to door. If you're going to run a campaign, that's what you need to do. Door to door, knock and find an issue. And like somebody said, it's really easy to lose people in a hurry. You say too much or try to find an issue that isn't relevant, that isn't going to be universally accepted. So, as he said, abortion. I can't do anything abortion about on the city council, so why address it? A question that would come up occasionally, what's your view on the unions? And my answer, which I had already thought about in advance and put out in my letter, is I'm pro-employee. And one guy got really upset. He said, that's not my question. I said, yes, it is. No, it's not. I want to know where you stand on unions. I said, sir, I know what you want me to tell you, and I'm not going to tell you that because I have a good friend of mine who's a long-term carpenters union. And the carpenters union does not stand behind him. They don't represent him. They won't help him. And he's on his own. Well, I'm not with the Carpenters Union, I'm with the Pipe Fitters Union, and they're really good. I said, great. Then I'm pro-Pipe Fitters Union. But I can't tell you I'm pro-union, because that would mean I support the Carpenters Union, and they don't. I'm pro-employee, and you live in my district, your union doesn't. So I'm pro-you. He didn't like it, and I said, if that cost me your vote, I'm sorry. And his wife looked at him and said, he's right. The only thing I really failed to do was get more than 22% of the voters out to vote. If everybody that said they liked me, and I don't think we had but 5 people in the whole walk that either had already made up their mind or weren't interested and don't do it. There was a lady, just a little anecdote here. We knocked on a door and got 2 dogs. Try to talk over that. Now most people that had dogs that were barking, they said, I can't open the door, I can't let the dogs out, what do you want, just slip it through the door. You just move on. But this lady wanted to talk to us, so she opens the door to talk to us. While the 2 dogs are going, I'm right. She said, what? So I reached down to talk to the dogs. And there's a little poodle thing and like a wiener dog. And both of them were just scared. You can tell by the bark. They're not, so I got the poodle kind of calmed down. She'd stopped barking, but the wiener dog kept coming around this lady. And every time he'd come around, she'd kick him and say, don't do it. He'd come back around and, don't do it. About the 3rd or 4th time, don't do it. Look, I told you, don't do it. If you can't listen to me, I don't want to listen to you. And she slammed the door on me. She was talking to me. So it became a joke from then on. Every time you'd hear ring the doorbell, the dog would bark, my wife would look at me, don't do it. As we're walking up about 4 houses down across the street, we're walking up to the door, and before there wasn't a dog or anything, she just said, don't do it. The guy came to the door, he'd been smoking, and he had the window open. He came to the door and he said, don't do what? But you got to have fun with it. I don't know if you have any questions.
You ever have anybody just tear your fire up without even looking at it or burn it in the grill? Or?
No, we did have one guy that, this was funny. It was a lot of fun. We were walking up across the street, and I see this guy comes out of his house, and I'm on the other side of the street, so I stop to get him because I know he's leaving and I'm not going to be at his house for a while. And so I walk up to his car, and he's in his truck backing up, and I said, I know you're leaving, I just want to introduce myself. And he looks at me and says, do you see that sign? Like, the one that says beware a dog next to your door? No, the other one, the little sign. No soliciting. I'm 20 yards away from the sign, talking to him in his truck, and he's mad because I didn't see the sign on his door. It said no soliciting. And it's not soliciting. That was the other thing that had an apartment complex tried to keep us out. I went in, used their restroom, and I said, I'm just letting you know that we're in the complex, going door to door, introducing ourselves. Oh, you can't do that. Yes, ma'am, I can. No, you can't do that. We don't have soliciting here. I said, well, it's not soliciting. I'm introducing myself. I'm not asking for a thing. Well, I'm going to call the owner, and they'll be here in a little bit, and they'll take it. 2 different apartment complexes did this. And I said, well, if you'd like to get into a constitutional legal battle, you can. I'd rather keep this civil and friendly, and all I'm doing is introduce myself. If you get a complaint, come find me. Not one person complained. And I'd say 20% of the people said, thank you for coming by. Nobody has ever come and knocked on our door. Nobody has ever introduced themselves. And I had more than one person say, you're the only person that showed up, you'll get my vote. Of course, I'm not sure they actually went to the polls, but so yeah, if the number of people that said they supported me would have voted, I'd have scored a huge. In 2017, the increase in voters from 2017 special election, which would be a low turnout, to the 2019 municipal election in April, which is also a low turnout, the voter increased 55%. The two candidates, the incumbent, his vote increased 6% of that 55% that he could have had. The other guy that came in third, his vote increased 7%. All the rest of them came to me. And it's because I went door to door, introduced myself, and made sure that I had big signs at every intersection coming into the subdivisions. You don't get to ask questions. Sit down.
After the election, did you feel let down? Did you feel discouraged? And what did you do about that?
Did I feel let down or discouraged after the election? I felt relieved. God has a plan for me, and I don't know what that is. He wanted me to run. I know that. He didn't want me to win the election, or I would have. I learned a lot, and I am still doing things that I said I would do. We had neighbors in one neighborhood of like 4 streets that complained that their streets were dark. So I have submitted a call for action to the city through their website and identified street lights that are obscured by trees, and the fact that that neighborhood has half the number of street lights on their streets that other subdivisions have. I've got another little nub of a street where the street goes up and dead ends into a soccer field for the high school, and when it goes up then it tees off to another street. So there's one little stub that has a duplex on either side, so you have 4 driveways on a street the length of one house, and the high school kids come and park there all the time for their games. They double and triple park, and the owners can't get into their driveways, the owners can't get to their mailboxes, the mailman can't get to the mailboxes, and heaven forbid they'd ever have to have an ambulance come for the 2 different people that are on oxygen. So what I'm going to push for, and I haven't addressed that yet, but it's on my list, is to get that particular little piece of street set up as resident-only parking. There's another area that's a speed issue between, there's 2 major arteries, and this is a main cut-through. And one lady has had her fence run through 3 times, her tree hit once, and actually ran into her house once. They come along drunk, they fly through this corner, they lose control. There's trees that have leaves that leak sap, that the road is real slick. They come around that, they slide off, and they just run right into her property. I've already gotten the city police department to start running speed traps at 1 a.m., which they hadn't been doing. I went to a city council meeting, talked to the chief of police, said, Chief, if one person tells me this, it's somebody complaining. But when I went down this street canvassing the street, and 50% of the people that answered their door, that was the #1 complaint. Chief said, we got a problem. I said, yeah, we do. So you can be a city councilman without being a city councilman, and when I get these problems resolved in 3 years, they've asked me to run again. When I do, I don't think I'm going to lose. Your question? I went through about 1,000 flyers. There's 2,900 registered voters in our ward. I think there's about 1,500 homes. I didn't actually count them. We would print out maps. I got a list of voters from the state, so I'd take all the, I sorted them all by street, and then I'd print out the streets, and then she would let me know as we went through whether they vote in April, because that's important, whether they vote in November, which is also important but less relevant, whether they voted in a special election, so I'd know how to handle it. But I also went to every door, even to non-registered. We had one guy, she was parked in front of his house, and he came out, and he was drunk. What are you doing in front of my house? She said, well, sir, I'm waiting for my husband. Oh, he went back in and came back out. What's your husband doing? Well, he's knocking door to door, campaigning, running for city council. Oh, well, he doesn't have to come to my door. I'm a felon and I can't vote. So when she picked me up and she told me that, I said, let's go to his house. I knocked on his door, and he came to the door and he said, I told her you don't have to come here, I'm a felon and I can't vote. And I said, but you're a member of my ward. You're important, and what you need and what you want matters to me. And he started to cry. I'm a winner. I didn't lose. Yeah.
Did you compile that information?
Compile.
Right. When you went to work
Yeah, she took a list of who was home and who wasn't home, and whether or not they were excited or not. There really were very, very few people when I would get done talking that would be against me. That's why I said if the number of people that said they supported me had actually voted, it would have been a blowout. It wouldn't have been.
Those are the parties, the county parties need to know that information as well. That's nice shareable information that allows the county parties to build their range. Because the people that are favorable to you are people that are favorable to the Constitution Party itself. So that they can start to make those connections. What you need is a big database of information that can be electronically downloaded into a general database and shared between the counties.
Right.
So you're not constantly reviewing that information. You know when you knock on that door if that's going to be a friendly door or not friendly door. And if it changes, that data can be changed right there at that point of contact.
Yeah, and we have that. But like I said, most of the doors that answered were friendly. And to that end, the awareness of the Constitution Party, most of the people that would say, Democrat or Republican, Constitution Party, I can live with that. A lot of them hadn't heard, and we have 3 or 4 people that were like, tell me more. And unlike the state race or the federal race where you don't have time, I mean, you're canvassing just to go, 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 we would take times. We got invited into people's homes, sat down at their kitchen table and talked with them for half an hour. Lady had us come in and sit down in our living room. Her husband, who, what's he have? It's multiple sclerosis, osteoporosis. Yeah, and I mean, he was like, took him a half an hour to get up the hallway. He came and sat in the living room with us. We talked for 45 minutes. So we have some new excitement about the Constitution Party that people didn't know what it was. And so for me, people say, when you say you need to go and knock on as many doors, I made a commitment that I would knock on every door in the ward, and that if I was elected on April 2nd and hadn't finished the walk, that as the city councilman, I would continue walking until I had. And that was in the literature that I sent out, because it's that important to me to represent you as my constituent, not the other city council members. The incumbent actually put on his Facebook page, it's been really great the last 2 years, pouring my heart and soul out working for the city of St. Charles. Well, that was a key point for me. He doesn't even know he doesn't work for the city of St. Charles. He doesn't know he doesn't realize that he works for you. And so that was the focus for me. That was the issue. These people wanted speed taken care of. These people wanted street lights taken care of. Little things, we can do that, and I will work with you on that. But the big issue for me was, has he ever come and knocked on your door? And why does he think he works for the city of St. Charles? And they were key selling points. So.
Did you, when you were going door to door, were you able to get people to talk to you about issues or whatever was on their mind? When I've done it, it's hard for them to get something out of them as far as what issues are important going on. Once in a while.
I would start with, I'm John Blazek, and I'm running for city council in Ward 9. You're in Ward 9, so you get to see my face today. And you've probably seen my face on the truck. Now you can see that there's actually a body, and it's not just a floating head. I had one of these in a 4x8 on each side of the back of my pickup truck. And when I was at work, my wife was driving around town all day. People would come up to me and say, dude, your signs are everywhere. I said, no, it's my wife. She's driving around. Go sit in Walmart parking lot for 2 hours. Go sit in Home Depot. People pass through, they see your sign. They don't remember where they saw it. So.
But what he did, besides introducing himself, is he would approach the person, do you have any concerns or questions?
Yeah.
That opened it up, and they would just really giving the information where they had the concern, where we have the speeding that's going on, or, we have these teenagers that are coming over to the playground at 10 to 12 at night, and we don't think belong there. That just opened it up. gave the information. If there was a concern, I wrote it down, he presented it, and he would come back with an answer. It was always followed up. We had a phone number, we followed up, or we went in person and talked to the person and said, this is being looked into, or they are doing this. We would again follow up, and they would come back, yeah, the police are here, you know, they've never been here this time, and there was excitement in their voice that someone is doing something. So, yeah, start out strong, and just go door to door. Be that person, be that founder, the founder.
And that's really, not everybody opened up. Not everybody said, you know, I've got all these problems or these concerns. But the ones that had concerns, it gave them a chance to talk about it. And it was, for me, my campaign was, I want to serve you. I want to work for you. And the sign here, I will work for you. I don't work for the city. And if they said I don't have any problems or I haven't had any issues, I would say, great. But when you do you want the guy to work to answer the phone? Because I put my phone, now that's not on this one, but several of them I actually had on my truck. I had my home phone number, my cell phone. Call me.
Yeah, John, what did your handouts look like? Was that just a copy of your sign, or did you have a lot of issue information on a handout? Or
The handout, the door knock cards were very generic. I went to my neighbor, one neighbor, and we actually took a camera into his house and got a picture of me at the door shaking his hand, an elderly gentleman. I went to another neighbor and got a picture of her. She actually has a walker. Just coincidentally, these are the two that the advertising company chose to use. She had a walker just set aside, and she was just barely reaching out to me, but she had this grin, like she was just really glad to see me, and they loved that. But the cards were very generic. He wanted me to run an attack campaign. He wanted me to send out 3 mailers, and we sent out 2. He wanted the second mailer to be not a rubber stamp and basically attack the incumbent as bought and paid for and show all the money that he'd spent and gotten from major political donations outside the ward. And I'm like, it's not me. I'm going to win because I'm the guy they want, not because he's Hillary Clinton and you can't let Hillary in the office. So I stuck to my guns on that, and I came in second. I don't know what would have happened if I didn't. But the literature that I handed out on the knock card was basically me, that I bullet points on things like public safety, road improvements, project cost overrun concerns, just things that people care about without going into specifics. Safety for our kids, parks, improving our parks. So the knock card was just a way to introduce myself. I wanted to use, it had been recommended just get cheap 8.5 by 11 that you can roll up and rubber band on their door. And this guy that I used for a printer had been elected before, and he said no. He said the first thing they do is they just throw it in the trash can. They don't even open it up. Or if they open it up, they fold it, and they fold it print to print, and they never open it up again. He said these knock cards, they're like 4 by 5 or 3 by 5. 3 by 5 knock cards. They're too big they're not big enough to really fold, and they're too big to crumple up. I mean, so they're just going to lay it down, and it's going to be open when they pick it up to throw it away later, so they see it at least twice. The mailer was, he had given me a couple of form letters that he had sent out for other candidates, and I went through and I picked out what I liked, and I wrote my introduction, and it was just who I am, where I came from, what I believe, but to stay away from any specifics. Don't go into specific issues, because for every person that likes your idea on that specific issue, there's 1 or 2 people that don't. And so it was, again, just generic, but who I am and heartfelt. I want to be the city councilman that you know and can talk to and call me up and say, hey, John, I got a problem, can you help me? And I'll be there for you. Not the guy that says, that's not the city's problem, you'll have to figure that out on your own. Anything else?
Did you have anybody steal your sign?
Yes, we lost a number of signs, and I don't know who was doing it. Every campaign, I was told, you're going to lose a couple of signs. We lost probably 7 or 8 yard signs, and we did have smaller yard signs. We didn't lose any of the large signs, and we didn't lose the great big ones. We did have, on the truck signs, I said they were 4 by 8. They weren't. They were 4 by 5 or 4 by 6, 4 by 6.5. And so on a 4 by 8 sheet, we had a 4-foot by 18-inch, really oddball size, and I said, put it in there too. So I had 2 long, thin, and I actually stuck one of those out where I'd been losing the smaller signs, and they stole that too. And I think it was the incumbent that was doing it, but I don't know. And the reason I think that is that Dan and I had a working agreement that I told him I wouldn't attack him. I said, I will not campaign against you, Dan. And I didn't say anything. I had information and ammo that I could have used against Dan, but I didn't want to do that. Again, I didn't want to go negative. And the only thing I said was that Dan is a firefighter. He's working 3 or 4 days on, 2 or 3 days off, 3 or 4 days off. He doesn't have time to campaign. And the last time he tried this, he got beat 2-1. So Dan's not going to win. And I'm asking you as Dan's supporter, if I had Dan's sign, I'd say, that's great. I'm glad you have his sign, because that's half my battle. You're not going to vote for Bart. Now let me tell you why you need to leave that sign in your yard and vote for me. Because otherwise Bart's going to win. So that was, but I don't know, I don't think Dan's people were stealing my signs. But I don't know who was.
How big is your city and how many are on the city council?
There are 10 wards, 1 councilman per ward. I think there's about 60,000 in St. Charles City. My ward has 2,900 registered voters. The Ward 7 has 4,500 registered voters. The difference is I have a college in my ward, and the kids don't register. They either stay registered at home or, so I've got a huge block of my ward that is voterless.
Well, I noticed you used integrity, liberty, and prosperity on your sign.
I stole that from one of the political parties.
I had 2 signs that kept getting knocked over by people. One sign that somebody took their foot and busted it. Take in mind, you know what base flooring is, like 1/4 inch. It's hard to bust through. But anyway, another sign that was shot by a 9mm. I'm rather bold. The sign says, elect Matthew Shepard, of course. Then part-time legislature, and over on the side, maintain our Constitution, abolish abortion, less government, less taxation.
And I would take the abortion off, because it's divisive and you'll lose half the support. But yeah, I don't know who. I looked every time we lost a sign. I said, this is good. Somebody hates us. We're scaring somebody. And that was the other thing. Every time somebody would take a little sign, because I did have some small yard signs, normal ones. I think I had like 50 of them printed up. Every time that somebody would take one of the small yard signs, I'd come back with a V. And these were put up with T-posts. I said, steal that. So, thank you.